Hello and welcome to the Greenway Outdoors podcast. My name's Kyle.
I'm AJ.
I'm Ryan.
And we are joined with good folks over at MUCC, Michigan United Conservation Club. You guys, I wanted you to introduce yourselves. You're on the screen already. I know we've got Steve here. You're kind of becoming a familiar face. I've seen you on Mike Avery's Facebook page eating. I've seen I've seen you all over the news. You've done some stuff with Meat Eater. You've been bouncing around. You are kind of the face of the MUCC.
Yeah, I'm trying to be. So my name is Steve Windom. I'm the Director of Development and Membership for Michigan United Conservation Clubs, MUCC. My role here is really everything that deals with fundraising, development, our memberships from our individual members to our clubs, and then also just making sure that we have lots of supporters to help us with our mission.
Awesome.
And I'm Justin Tomei. I'm the Policy and Government Affairs Manager at MUCC. So I'm the only full-time policy staff. I manage our internal policy processes, and I also serve as a lobbyist to the state's Natural Resources Commission and our state legislature on behalf of our membership.
Let's start there. You said on behalf of our membership, and that is something. Those key words are extra special to me because MUCC, in my opinion, has become like the poster child. I would say Howl for Wildlife, and MUCC seem to be the two kids on the block that are getting the most attention because of what you guys are doing specifically. And by representing your membership, when you go and do your lobbying, if you will, explain what that process is like. Explain who are you interacting with, and how are you representing us?
Yeah, so our policy making process is extremely unique in this world, in that me as our full-time policy staff have zero say in what positions we take in the legislature or at the Natural Resources Commission. It is entirely member-driven. Any member can draft a policy, run it through our process, which involves quarterly board meetings, and then finally our annual convention in the spring, where it's adopted by a larger representation of the membership.
That's interesting because I think that's how politics are supposed to work.
In theory, yes.
I know, and yet we don't have a border wall. Interesting.
Nope. So once these policies are adopted, we do get a little bit of discretion in when we approach things based on the political winds, what bills are being brought up in the legislature. But generally, then I take these policy positions to our legislature to support or oppose whatever bill we're happen to be working on during the day. And every single time I sit down in front of a microphone talking to these folks, I open with, I'm here on behalf of our 40,000 members and 200 member clubs, because I'm just the mouthpiece for the voice that they've already kind of spoken with. So it's really nice, and it gives a lot of credence to our message when I get to say that, because it's not just another Lansing lobbyist saying these words or taking these positions. It's actually normal, everyday people, the rank and file, conservationists in Michigan.
It's kind of like a lawyer where you're supposed to, like, if you're representing someone that even you probably think is, like O.J. Simpson's lawyer, for instance, they have to be completely unbiased to the situation and just represent their client the best they can. And that's kind of the position you're in. Lucky, do you hunt and fish? Like, do you find yourself agreeing with most of the policies that you have to pitch?
I do, yeah. I grew up hunting and fishing in northern Michigan. Shot my first bear last fall, deer hunted since I was old enough to go out into the blind with my dad. My kid now, she's 5, she goes with me. So yeah, I live it and breathe it when I'm not at work. So I wouldn't say that I have 100% agreement with necessarily every position we take, but generally I feel as though our positions represent the rank and file of Michigan hunters, anglers, and trappers.
You were going to say something, Ryan?
Excuse my ignorance, everybody.
You're ignorant.
Ignorant. Isn't there sometimes like a negative perception? I'm not saying this about you, but
Seems like he's getting aggressive towards you.
In general, like in other aspects of politics, I've heard like lobbyist as like a negative.
Well, because you're hearing things about like the oil companies lobbyists that are like paying off people in order to get them to do what they're supposed to, but technically they're not supposed to pay them off. And it's kind of like the negative connotation you get with like lawyers and stuff like that. But I mean, he seems like a nice enough guy. It just
that was not directed at you. I was just trying to make.
He's a dirty lobby.
I joke about it all the time, and when I'm joking with my members, I say, "Hey, that's above my pay grade. I'm just a dirty lobbyist." but I'll say there's kind of like two different types of lobbying. There's the lobbying that you're talking about, where they just
big
money,
sugar,
hacks, dinners, golf outings, whatever. A lot of nonprofits and organizations like us have a lobbyist like me who act as the subject matter expert in front of the legislature. So A good example is there was a commercial fishing bill last fall that was absolutely terrible. Would have allowed for the commercialization of many of our game fish like walleye, perch, bass, et cetera. So
I remember seeing an email about that.
yeah, so I went to the legislature. I met with about 24 of the sponsors of those bills and just kind of went through point by point about why, though, in our opinion, those bills are really bad ideas. And so lobbying is just a term that I have to use to file paperwork with the state. But yeah, in the instance of what we do here and what a lot of other organizations do, it's more of a subject matter expert than that lobbyist like from that movie, thank you for smoking.
Right. He's basically our voice. So, okay. I mean, you can either lobby for the good guys or the bad guys, and the bad guys are always going to have lobbyists. It's just like in general, the anti-hunters and the vegans and the liberals that hate us, those are the same people that have the biggest voice, the most lobbyists. So if you don't fight fire with fire, then you're not gonna even be heard, and all of a sudden you're wiping our walleye population clean out of the Great Lakes. So it's those voices are important. Aside from that commercial fishing one, I guess for that bill to come up, can you kind of tell us about who was wanting that? Like, who pitched that? What were their intentions? Like, what were their goals? And what was the process like for you guys to become aware of it in order to go fight it? Because that I'm curious about.
So a version of that bill had been introduced a few years ago. So it wasn't a necessarily new concept. It's something the commercial fishing industry wants. They argue that they need game fish to survive. We argue that they don't. And then also it's not appropriate because those fish have been reared and managed for 5 decades by licensed dollars. But that bill was authored primarily, the chief sponsor was Representative Jason Morgan from Ann Arbor. For him, it is a personal issue. His father was a commercial angler. He grew up on the decks of commercial fishing vessels. And so it was a very personal matter for him. We kind of heard that the bill was dropping. We knew it was coming. So we were prepared for it. Once it dropped, you saw our emails. We
right.
sent out a number of emails to our membership about it. Our membership sprung into action. We sent about 85,000 emails to the legislature over the course of a couple weeks, effectively killing that bill in its tracks. It has not moved one iota since then. But then our CEO and myself, we scheduled meetings with as many of the sponsors that would take us, went through why we think it's a bad idea. We didn't convert everybody. We did get a few converts.
Well, people removing their name from the bill.
We got one person to remove the name from the bill, which is not an easy task in Michigan. It's not as simple as just, hey, do this. You have to request it on the floor.
Yeah.
Like, there's a process to it. So
you got to do it in front of everyone and be like, I was wrong. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
which there shouldn't be shame in that.
Yeah, like new information breeds new, although you shouldn't be signing on a bill if you didn't do that research. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there should be no shame in switching your side. But if you were to like sign off on a bill and then someone brings information to you and you're like, oh, I had no idea, then you're kind of an asshole that you didn't like prep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why are you signing stuff if you don't know? Sign it and we'll read it later is not a...
Yeah.
Well, it also gave our staff and Justin the opportunity to meet a lot of freshman legislature. Yeah. So there's been a lot of turnover and a lot of new elected officials here in the state of Michigan. So having something like this come up while we were able to effectively kill it, it also gave us some great face time with those new freshman legislators so they can get to know us, our mission, and realize, like you said earlier, Kyle, that we're very unique in what we do and how we do it. We're, one of the only organizations in the nation like us, and that we're here to speak for our members, for their constituents. So our members are their constituents at the same time. We represent everyone from Iron Mountain to Kalamazoo to St. Ignace and down to, Bedford. So
even Ann Arbor.
Even Ann Arbor, we have members in. So we represent everybody, and it's good for them to know us and get that relationship started early.
Question for... Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say a lot of good came from that too. So on both sides of the aisle. So we had one Republican that was on the bill. He reached out to us afterwards, and now we're working with him. He's kind of becoming our champion for some funding for a venison donation program in the House. And then also, we've had Democrats reach out to us because leadership told them they're not allowed to do anything about hunting or fishing without checking with us first. So, it was a very positive from a pretty bad bill. So it was good. It was good we had that opportunity.
Yeah, sometimes you don't find yourself until you have a little bit of that adversity. 2 questions. First one is you mentioned either 85 or 45,000 letters. And my question is, what is the process? How did you get 85,000 or 45,000? I don't remember which number it was, letters drafted up? How'd you corral the troops like that? And then like I kind of tell people, it's like when you're joining MUCC, it's like kind of joining the family. What is the process of communication in order to get people to write those letters?
Yeah, so we have a advocacy software program that we use, and basically I draft a form letter, put it into this program, and then we reach out to our members through all of our available means. I text them, we send them emails, we put it on social media, partner groups. Basically every fishing organization in the state shared this at that point, and it was 85,000.
I knew it was one or the other.
Every single sponsor of the bill got somewhere like 3,000 letters or emails about it. So it was really just us communicating to our members about this bill, and they found it. I mean, it was the most successful like call to action we've ever had in the history of the organization by an order of magnitude. And it really made a difference because those form letters, a lot of times they don't get read when there's 10 of them. They'll get a legislator will get a note. You got 10 emails about this. You get 20, they start taking notice. You get almost 3,000, and I was getting texts from people that don't work in legislative offices in the Capitol because they were hearing about it. One legislator took a meeting with us, and they don't normally take lobbyist meetings, and I basically got yelled at for a half hour for effectively shutting down her office for 3 days because they were getting so many emails they couldn't handle it. They didn't have the staff to do it.
It would be annoying, like, because everything that you need gets buried.
Oh yeah.
Well,
that's what we want.
Don't propose stupid bills. That's preventable.
Do you guys see like issues with like trying to fix or resolve problems or teach people new information? How do I phrase this? Like, is there really like tough party loyalty, like where like one side is like not gonna move at all?
Sometimes. I will say conservation issues are one of the few remaining uniters left in the political realm. And I'll use as an example in October of 2022. So, I mean, it was literally like 9 days before the November election in 2022. We had a press conference with Democrats and Republicans together asking for wetland restoration funding in conjunction with us, Ducks Unlimited, Great Lakes Audubon, and then, like I said, Republicans and Democrats, sitting legislators who were actively running for re-election. And we all got together and asked for this wetland restoration money because it was the right thing to do. So sometimes you get some of that. It depends on the issue, but a lot of times conservation is something that we can still find bipartisan support for. And so it's not as bad.
Okay, that's interesting.
Going a little bit into muddy water, and you can bump me back if you don't want to go there, but we're in the swamps of duck hunting right now with this conversation. I want to ask you guys some things. We have laws in Michigan that make no sense. You guys are aware of that. We've got, if you rest your gun on your tailgate while you're upland game bird hunting to have lunch, you have a firearm and a unsealed firearm in a motor vehicle, and that's a ticket. We have we're basically one of the only states that don't have dove hunting. We have a deer bait ban that makes no scientific proof. There's no scientific proof that it helps, hurts, or does anything whatsoever, except for we're seeing our success rates as we see our harvest rates plummet, I think, in every single hunting zone this year. We have these laws that make absolutely no sense, and they're upsetting because when I look at how they're designed, the dove hunt they put up to a public review, which makes no sense because technically that was, we're supposed to manage our wildlife based on science, not based on who thinks we should dove hunt or who thinks we shouldn't. Because if we put every species up to a vote, I think you guys would be real bummed to find out what we would be allowed to hunt anymore. So those sorts of things, like those terrible laws, you have to establish this relationship with the Department of Natural Resources, as do I, right? I started my television show for no other reason than to sell more hunting and fishing licenses, because I know 60% of hunting and fishing licenses are sold to white males over the age of 55 in Michigan, and if we don't replace that demographic in 10 to 15 years, you, me, and everyone in between is going to be out of a job, and we are not going to have natural resources and clean water and species sustainability efforts and anti-poaching efforts and fish stocking efforts. All that's gone in 15 years if we can't replace the next demographic. So me, of all people, want to sell more hunting and fishing licenses and ramp up that funding. but holding people accountable, like how much you guys have to walk that line, and also what are you guys doing for things like that?
Yeah, and so just to kind of reiterate before Justin kind of jumps into some of these hot button topics, what MUCC goes to bat for and how we fight is strictly based on our membership. So, if we don't have a resolution proposed to us to go and fight that silly law about an uncased firearm resting on your tailgate, which was initially designed to stop people from road hunting and hunting from vehicles. Now, that had unintended consequences, obviously, down the road. But until we get the word and the nod from the membership, we can't really go to bat on that, and we don't have the authority to just make our own resolutions and policies. And we have to allow our membership to pick those battles.
Sure.
Just as you were saying, our membership is all of that demographic, white males over 55. If you look at the pictures from our convention, Justin and myself and a handful of others are the youngest people in the room. I went to a wild game dinner last night at the Detroit Athletic Club, and I was by far the youngest person at my table talking about some of these issues. So it's not just the fact that we want to recruit more people and replace that demographic to sell more licenses and to keep our outdoor heritage alive, but we've got to get our generation involved. Like, we kind of sit around. We don't have a lot of people on the bench. We need people to step up for our conservation policy board. We need people to be on fundraising committees. We need people to be on our executive board. So while we're all in the same mission and we're all working for the same end game, we need to call out those who are in this space and not taking action, not getting involved, not using their platform. You guys are a great example of how our generation can use a platform, use our voice to bring more people into it. But we have a lot of people who are just clicking the like button on Instagram Reels and not really taking action or getting out there. We need our generation to really force the older generation to pass the torch to us. The old guard, I believe, is on their way out. They did a lot of great work, but it's up to us now as we move forward. And, Justin can touch on some of those issues that you mentioned with doves and, the baiting ban and some of those things that have been given reason that we might not personally agree with either. But again, our membership has to be the one to tell us to go take action on those issues.
Yeah, before Justin jumps in, to your point, what you're saying is you guys have only so many people and so many resources that you can only focus on so many problems at once. And especially, I'm sure, when bills like this are popping up all the time, it keeps you pretty busy. So the process for a member of MUCC would be to say, okay, this is what I think we should be focused on, and then kind of pitch it and have it go up through the ranks. And then if the other people agree, then that takes the priority through that. So you guys are kind of a streamlined process. Like, if someone's like, man, I'm really passionate about this one thing, you guys are the process to be able to hopefully ramp up the troops together to be able to move it forward.
Yeah, so a great story with that is how, and the only reason that we have a youth mentor license here in the state of Michigan. So for your listeners and, your followers that don't know what that is, here in Michigan, anyone that's 9 years old and under can get a youth mentor license. And so they have to be within arm's reach of a licensed hunter, 18 years of older. But I have 3 kids. Justin has 1. My kids are 13, 11, and 7. All of them have used the youth mentor license, and I didn't even realize MUCC was the catalyst of that until after I started working here. And so what that allows me to do is that I get to decide when my children join me in the field. I get to decide when I instill that outdoor heritage in them. The state doesn't get to decide that anymore. So just like, I think, Kyle, you were in the same age bracket, we had to be 12 years old to take hunter safety at our age. We had to be 14 to hunt with a rifle. But what happened is that an electrician out of Dorr, Michigan, he's now the president of our board, just recently took office as the president, but he was mad that the state was telling him when his kids can be out in the field. He didn't think that that's right. And so he came to MUCC. He's been a longtime member. He submitted that resolution. It went to convention and actually failed the first year he brought it to the floor. Didn't have enough allies, didn't have enough information to share. So then he came back a second year, was much more prepared. He pitched the same idea, and then the body passed that resolution. MUCC got to work with the legislature and the DNR. And then, some short time later, this guy, just kind of a gun store owner, an electrician out of Dorr, Michigan, he was at a bill signing with the governor to change the law that said you and I can now decide when our young person gets to hunt with us and when they get to start experiencing the great outdoors with us. So that simple matter, as you said, if you're passionate about something, there's a process for it through MUCC. You can bring it to us. We'll help you write the resolution. It goes to our conservation policy board. There it gets amended or tweaked or kind of written a little better. If it passes the policy board on a quarterly meeting, it then goes to our annual convention. just like we had in March, we were in Sault Ste. Marie. We've got lots of things that passed about working with the DNR and a possible moose hunt. We've got things about an extra, just all these things that are happening around the state of Michigan. We need our membership to speak up, but we also need more members to be involved. We know that we have over 1 million license holders here in the state of Michigan, over 650,000 deer hunters. But, at 40,000 members, that sounds really great for a conservation NGO, but that's not even a drop in the bucket if we really want to have true power in Lansing and be able to hold the DNR accountable, be able to hold the legislator accountable to actually make these laws and changes and, protect our natural resources for the end of time.
So going back to some of those specific issues you mentioned, there's actually a lot to unpack on some of them. The gun resting on your truck thing, yes, extremely gray, ambiguous, not very intelligent law. We actually do have policy on it. We have worked to change that in the past. It was up in the 21-22 legislative session. I don't remember what happened to it. But to go to the question even before that, that is one of those issues that sneakily kind of immediately becomes polarizing. I would say it's not universal, but generally the Democrats have very little appetite at the time to touch anything with guns. So now is not going to be a good time to try and push that bill because it's probably just not going to go anywhere.
So it's about timing.
Yeah. Timing is huge. We see an opportunity and we strike when we can, but right now would not be the best time to do that.
So you're kind of taking you take a bill and you look at the fundamentals of the bill, and then you look at who's in office.
Yep.
And also if there was a mass shooting recently, or if this or if that, or you're kind of looking at all the components of it, and you're like, here's the reasons why this isn't the right time for this one. This would work if we had this. So it's all about timing.
Exactly.
Strategy.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I'm the only person in the office that does policy work 40 hours a week. Our CEO splits it, with her million other duties, and I have an intern that works part-time. So yeah, I mean, our political capital is limited. We're effective when we use it, and that's the key. We don't just go fighting battles we know we're going to lose.
Yeah. It's not on principle. It's on
exactly
converting it actually.
A good example that I'm working on right now is something that Republican legislatures probably never would have touched, but it's very important to our bass anglers in particular. And in Michigan, it's exceedingly easy to get permits to kind of nuke your lake and kill all the weeds under the guise that you're treating an invasive species. Sometimes the permitting can be as simple as, I have an invasive species present. Then they go out and they use glyphosate and wipe out their whole lake, turning their lake into a swimming pool. Terrible for habitat, terrible for the ecology of the lake. So I'm working on
what's it like
that. I don't know if we'll get it done this year to try and get these weeds, to let that habitat still exist, to find that happy medium where people can treat these invasive species but not ruin the complete habitat of the lake. So yeah, it's all the political capital when we can get it. To go back to doves, that's a big issue. That's a cornerstone issue for MUCC, not doves specifically. So Michigan is a referendum state, meaning that any individual, given the money and the time, they can gather enough signatures and refer a law to the ballot. And that's what happened in 2006 with doves. Doves were listed as game species. This was my first election that I actually voted in, and I voted for a dove hunt. But with this, they were listed as a game species through the legislature. The law was referred to the ballot, and we lost.
Yeah, 23% is all we got, or something like that.
Yeah, and that makes it incredibly difficult to change now because that's the statute. So it's not as simple as going to the NRC, having them listed as a game species and set up a hunt like they would with maybe any other species. So the reason that's a cornerstone issue is because we're a referendum state, we want to keep our game management decisions out of the legislature as much as possible. There's a role for them to play, setting license fees and things of that nature, setting up, the funds for the department to use. But the actual management decisions we want left to the department and our Natural Resources Commission, because the NRC is designed to be as insulated from political pressures as possible. They're not completely insulated, but it is the best that we can do. So with doves, that one's an example of why we want to stay out of the legislature with a lot of these game management decisions.
And it gives us guidance for future battles as well, right? It was very easy for HSUS and other animal rights organizations to spend tens of millions of dollars on advertising around the state to convince people that doves are a songbird or they shouldn't be hunted. And it's very easy to get a voter to vote no on something than it is to get them to vote yes on something. And so, that political capital that Justin referenced, we want to pick our battle so that we don't invite the other side of the coin to come in and just wash out a topic or wash out a species so that we don't ever have a chance to hunt or manage them as well. So we're very strategic in winning and where we pick our battles and how we fight.
So because of the way the whole dove situation went down, because it wasn't planned as strategically, it was basically a shot in the foot for getting it back.
Yeah, I mean, 40 plus other states around the nation have a dove hunt, and Michigan is now one. So it would take an act of the legislature to change that law, and that's a big uphill battle. So that's a far off topic for us to even try and take on.
Dang, stinks.
It will certainly end up on the ballot again too.
But I want a dove hunt.
Yeah.
Unless we can get 250,000 members. So I mean, we can talk about one day, but we really gotta get the rank and file built up before we go after that issue.
Yeah. What are the goalposts? Like, say we want to try to make big moves for that. What happens? What do we do?
250,000 MUCC members.
And an entirely different legislature that is in favor of that hunt.
But it would still end up on the ballot most likely. And if it ends up on the ballot
We're gonna
in a
lose.
non-presidential year, my guess is probably $10 million statewide campaign. I mean, it's not cheap anymore. I ran political campaigns for about 15 years before I got involved in conservation. And while I would relish the opportunity, it would be a very difficult pull in this state. And it would be very expensive.
Wow.
That sucks. I want it.
And it's
bad.
so stupid. It's just so silly.
Yeah.
That's why it hasn't.
redone.
You'll see us go to the legislature and oppose something that we actually might support. I don't have a good example because we haven't had a good opportunity to do it in my time here. But if they did something tomorrow that even if we support in principle, we could very well go to the legislature and say, don't do this, because then it would be subject to that referendum. We would rather see the commission do this or the department through their policy-making processes, depending on the issue. So keeping things out of the legislature when possible is very important to us.
The Greenway Outdoors is brought to you by Ram Trucks, built to serve. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, your adventure starts here. Savage Arms, better comes standard. Nosler Ammunition, world's finest bullets, ammunition, and brass. Boss Shot Shells, superior made and American made. Carlson's Choke Tube's the only choke tube we've ever purchased. Onyx Hunt, know where you stand.
If you want to be here, it all starts here. At Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, we have the widest selection of the quality brands you love to get you outdoors. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, our friendly, knowledgeable outfitters will help you find the right products for your next trip. Shop with confidence with our low price guarantee. Plus, club members save even more on great gear with exclusive member pricing. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, voted America's best outdoor retailer.
For every purpose, for every path, for every soul, for every season, there's a ram.
Legends aren't born, they're created. Introducing Impulse from Savage, the all-new American-made straight-pull bolt-action rifle. Unmatched innovation, fast reloads, maximized efficiency, repeatable accuracy. Welcome to American Straight Pole. Only from Savage.
What is your relationship with the DNR like?
I would say it's largely great. The new director has been doing very well in his new role. I can't remember. He's been around maybe 6 months or so.
Yeah.
He would not be what I would have considered for a traditional DNR director, but what he does know is he knows state government. He knows what he knows and he knows what he doesn't know, and he relies heavily on his staff for the things that he's not an expert himself on. We talk to the biologists all the time. If there's something coming up with the legislature, I'll either call their legislative liaison or one of their biologists, ask what they think. Our relationship is pretty good with them right now. That's not to say we don't have speed bumps. I mean, there's the whole Great Lakes consent decree issue where we're actually in litigation with the department and the state of Michigan over how tribal and state commercial anglers state recreational anglers share the fishery. So, watchdog bites when we have to, but generally I would say our working relationship with the department is very good.
Yeah, I think it's based on our mission statement, to unite citizens to conserve, protect, and enhance Michigan's natural resources and outdoor heritage. We understand the importance of a strong DNR, that they need to be well funded. They need great biologists, that the leadership needs to listen to those biologists who are in the field. And that, we understand that our natural resources are what we love to utilize. And so we know that they need to be managed. But just like Justin said, we're not going to sit there and be a mouthpiece for them if they're in the wrong or if they're doing something that's overstepping. We get accused a lot of being in bed with the DNR, but it could be really the farthest thing from the truth. While we have the great working relationship on lots of topics, we saw in 2020 when they tried to have the motorized boating ban, we sued them then as well, because that was unconstitutional and it was an executive order that made no sense. And so we got that overturned. And during COVID, when you were supposed to social distance, MUCC is the reason you were able to be on your boat here in Michigan and get out there and enjoy those pastimes. So, there's definitely a fine line that we walk. We kind of see that as an offense-defense kind of mindset where we want to help them in ways that it strengthens them to manage our resources better, but we're also going to play defense if there's a egregious overstep or something that we know is not correct in following our mission statement to really conserve, protect, and enhance.
Yeah, I think we follow the same thing, whereas I'm kind of explaining is like my life mission, like if you were to ask everyone in this office what our goal is, it's to sell more hunting and fishing licenses. Literally, that's our goal. We believe in the North American model. We believe in the fact that buying hunting licenses goes to help and conserve and defend our natural resources. We believe all of that, and that's our main goal. And I'll be honest, when we started the show about 8 years ago, I was a little we were young, but we were also a little naive in the fact that it was like that was like where my conversation would stop. And honestly, I was getting yelled at by Ted Nugent every other day. He's like, you need to also hold them accountable. You can't have blind faith in anybody. You know what I mean? Because this law doesn't make sense, and this law doesn't make sense, and this law doesn't make sense. And that's where you guys come in, where you're kind of like the beacon of. It's kind of like you're their parent in the weirdest way. He's like, no, not that, not. Okay, there we go. And it's kind of like that, but also, it's probably the best branch of government we have. I would say, you know what I mean? As far as like, I agree with them on a lot of things, you know what I mean? And that's a good thing. It should be that way. If it ever gets to the point where I don't agree with 90%, then we're in a big, big problem. I'm going to make this point just because we've made it before, and I think it's kind of an interesting one too. We've been to Idaho. We've been to 43 states now filming and worked with DNRs in almost, I would say, 2/3 of those states. And in one of the states, the fish and game that we worked with there is Idaho. And out of all the states I've been to, I have never been more impressed with a fish and game or Department of Natural Resources than I was with Idaho Fish and Game. The gentleman we worked with there, his name is Brett High, and he is he's a biologist. And we did a snakehead, not a snakehead, cutthroat episode with them. Talking about the cutthroat trout in the river systems there, and then we also did a ice fishing episode again on cutthroat, but kind of covering different conservation stories on those in the Snake River as well as remote lakes and that sort of thing. But in talking to him, like Idaho bases all of their decisions, their fish and game, almost the way MUCC does, where they put out a survey and they live by it. So people are determining how they're spending their money, what they're focused on, and what they're doing. And one of the major things to me that I noticed too, we were at one of the lakes called Henry's Lake, and there were some fishermen walking out to go out on the lake, and Brett stopped them, as well as they had a DNR officer with them and another biologist as well, or a head of PR guy. And they stopped the fishermen, and they were talking to him, and the relationship was incredible. They didn't even ask to see their licenses or anything like that. It was what are you catching? What are you seeing? What are you happy with? What are you not happy with? And they didn't do it for the cameras. We weren't filming. It was like that was the relationship that was there. And we got to talking to Brett while we were ice fishing, and I think Ryan might have asked it, but we went through some of the laws like we explained to you guys, like the ones that we have problems with. And he said that he finds overall that, and this is off a point that you made, he finds that overall the states that have really effective, really good relationships with the people, those DNR offices or those fish and game offices, tend to be biologist-driven, meaning all the decisions are made off of the biologists. He said the states where the relationship is sour between the people and the Department of Natural Resources and Fish and Game almost coincides directly with how much of the police force management the DNR takes. So there's a police force thought process and there's a biologist thought process. You must follow the law no matter what. Hold on, let's make sure we're making these laws make sense. And based on like the grade that you would give, let's say if you gave Michigan a B+, or you gave Idaho an A, or you gave another state, let's say the Macarena State, you gave a C-, you would be able to coincide how much police force management is used versus how much biologist information is used in order to make the laws and establish a relationship with the people. And what you said was interesting to me is we need to hold them accountable, because if they do something wrong that doesn't make sense, and you name some things, immediately you had to become constitutional, which means you're talking about, to me, that means police force overstepping their bounds with constitutional rights as far as being able to go on your boat and that sort of thing. But you said it yourself, where it's like we need to make sure their DNR is listening to their biologists. And that almost always seems to be the key. And then ever since that day when we had that conversation with him, I've watched it in all the conversations that I've had, hundreds of conversations with different DNRs, Fish and Games, podcasts, people, so on and so forth. It just seems as though the more the biologists are heard, the better the relationship between the DNR and the people is, because it makes scientific sense as opposed to this police state unconstitutional push.
Our biologists are given a lot of leash with this new director. He trusts them because he is not one. The other cool thing about Michigan's biologists that I'll say, from the most of them that I know, they're hunters too, or anglers, whatever
right,
the case may be. And when I shot my bear last fall, one of the first people I texted was a bear biologist, because I know he's a hunter, and he, I wanted him to see it too. So, and it was a dandy bear. I wanted to show it off, but yeah, they're one of us. Like a lot of them are. So it's really great that they live what they're doing as well.
And I think part of it too is like overall mentally, since that day and me watching for it, I tend to try and advocate where I can for the biologists having that loose leash. And that makes me happy to hear that that's kind of the direction it sounds like Michigan's taking.
Is this new guy?
Well, it's also a funding issue too. We know that right now that our DNR here in Michigan's got some funding issues. And so as some things change, I think there's a lot of people who just want to blame the DNR for things, but don't really look into the nuance or how things are managed in the past and what new changes are coming to make the biologists be able to do their job better so they can get better reporting so that we can do better management. So it's also a funding concept here in Michigan where we're probably going to see some changes coming down the road with our license structure fees and other things like that. But it's all in the benefit to maintain our natural resources and our outdoor heritage. Without the management of these species, we won't have that outdoor heritage to live and pass on to my kids and your kids and anyone else that comes through the door.
Not to mention everything's so expensive now, just in general.
Yeah.
How much does the governor come into play with what you guys do?
She vetoed your deer bait ban.
Yes. MUCC has policy. Our members have taken up deer baiting multiple times, and we actually do oppose deer baiting, not on any ethical or moral grounds. We support the baiting of bears. But our membership has taken up multiple times, and we do support a baiting ban as a method of disease control. And that we could spend a whole podcast on just that issue if you wanted, I'm sure.
I would love that. We will not agree.
The governor, we may not.
Yeah.
But the governor, I actually, to her credit, since the boating ban, I will add that qualifier, has largely stayed out of our issues.
And the DNR's way.
And they've kind of let us conservationists work with the department, manage things in-house, and she has largely just let us do our thing. There are a few rules that were kind of laid out that we've kind of had to live within. We haven't had much expansion of new opportunity in the state. But at the same time, there has been very little tolerance to try and take much opportunity away from her office. So Governor Whitmer has largely stayed out of our issues, which is nice, and let us kind of self-regulate the way that we want. And also when something came up that was very important to us, and I think it was the decriminalization of mandatory harvest reporting. So there were 2 attempts at that here in Michigan. The first one got voice vote amended on the floor, and it dramatically changed the bill to the point that the Natural Resources Commission would lose a good chunk of its authority, and at least in terms of this type of order mandating some reporting. We actually were neutral on the harvest reporting, but what we didn't want was that commission authority to be taken away, because as we talked about, we want the legislature out of a lot of those decisions. And the governor actually reached out to us, asked what we thought, and we helped give her the information that she needed to protect that commission structure and keep those political whims out of it. So it's been a give and take with her office largely, but for the most part, we've been able to do what we need to do with the department as conservationists.
Awesome. One of the topics that's hot button with me is the Sportsman Against Hunger. And you had mentioned earlier in this conversation, you had mentioned you mentioned venison funding or feeding the needy or something like that, and I assume that's the program you're alluding to. Can you kind of talk to me about the state of that situation right now?
Yeah. So
explain what the program is for anyone who doesn't know, and then explain.
Yeah. It's a little in the weeds, but I feel it's important to make the distinction. So in 2005, the legislature passed a bill creating Sportsman Against Hunger. Through the Department of Natural Resources, they were given the authority to contract with a 501c3 nonprofit for the distribution of donated venison. Michigan Sportsman Against Hunger, founded in 1991, is that 501c3 that the department has contracted since 2005. They're largely funded in Michigan through donations. When you go buy a license at the point of sale, they're supposed to ask you a question: do you want to donate to Michigan Sportsman Against Hunger? That's where almost all their funding comes from. And basically what they do is they enroll processors into the program, so then you can take your deer to a participating processor, drop it off. It gets turned into ground venison and distributed to food banks, churches, homeless shelters, to feed needy families across Michigan. It's donated millions of pounds of food and millions of warm meals for families since its inception. So
that's beautiful. And real quick, I'll jump in real quick. The distinction, because commercial deer harvest is illegal. So commercial deer harvest is where, companies come in, sharpshooters come in, wipe out a bunch, process them, and then sell the meat. That is illegal because number one, we don't think the resource can sustain it long term. Although right now our harvest numbers are so low, possibly because of the bait ban, but that's besides the point. But the harvest numbers are low right now. But what this program allowed was for hunters that bought licenses, that used the license to hunt the deer, and then took that deer and then donated it. And what you have to understand is that sounds a little commercially, and I'm only saying this distinction because I've gotten some pushback from people on the program, which was shocking to me. But one of the things that I want to get people to understand is we have to harvest this year's surplus in order to make room for next year's fawns. There will always be more deer born, but there won't be more habitat. And right now, even with the Sportsman Against Hunger program, we're not even hitting those numbers right now. We're not harvesting enough deer. This year was one of the worst years we've seen in a long time. So we have to harvest more deer. That's not me saying we should do it commercially. It's saying that we should get more people involved in hunting deer, and that access harvest, and it also encourage people that do hunt, maybe buy an extra tag and get one, and then turn that deer into this program so that it can help feed the needy. So I just wanted to kind of buffer that, because I couldn't believe it, but I've been getting a lot of pushback on it recently.
Yeah, I mean, on principle, it's an amazing program, and it's had great success in the past to encourage, our Michigan hunters to take that doe, take that deer, and help manage the population. When Justin can jump into kind of some of the pitfalls we've been experiencing lately, but a lot of it is just a lack of processors that can take these deer. If you don't have one locally, after you've bought your doe tag, after you've been in the woods, and then you want to try and donate this, it's getting more cumbersome for our hunters to actually donate those deer, and then turn that into a warm meal for a needy family. And so we've been taking some action and doing some things on the ground here to make sure that program is revitalized or well funded at the same time.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was interested in, because even when we've taken, what started this question for me was I took my deer to a processor this year. Actually, it's the buck sitting in that chair. I don't know if you can see it. We put it there because Jeffrey's not here.
Yeah.
Yep.
But my biggest deer went 132 in Michigan. As you guys know, that's not too bad. But when I went in to take this deer in to have it processed, they had said to me, I asked them about the Sportsman Against Hunger, and they said they don't do it. They had too much trouble collecting the money for the processing. That's what they said to me. So then I heard that from another processor. The same thing was, well, we never get compensated for the processing, and we do it at a discount, and it ends up hurting us, and we get backed up. And the third problem, another one, because we cold called. We're crazy. We cold called butchers. And the third person told me that they didn't have the freezer space, that it was taking up too much room. So I guess that those are the three things that I've run into personally.
Nothing that you said is unique to those individual processors.
Right.
I would be lying to you if I told you that the state of the program was exceptionally strong. Rather, I'm going to tell you that it needs help, frankly. And a lot of the issues that you mentioned are the reasons that it's having trouble. Now, the reason I made the distinction about Sportsman Against Hunger, the statutory program, and Michigan Sportsman Against Hunger, the 501c3, is because we're actively seeking more money for the department to purchase refrigerated trailers, increase the payments to processors, and shipping for disease testing costs for the statutory program that the department would then use with the 501c3. So it's not, money doesn't go to the 501c3 directly. It has to go through the department for statutory reasons. So we're asking for that money to try and alleviate some of what you're talking about. Processors that enroll in the program, I think the numbers, they get paid like $80 a deer. But if you take in a deer to get it processed, it's probably $1.25.
At least.
Maybe 150
At least.
bucks.
Probably more.
Yeah. So they're missing out on money there. So why would a processor want to take a 40% pay cut? I mean, yes, it's the charity aspect of it, but at the same time, they're running a business. Another big problem that happened for your listeners that are out of Michigan, opening day of archery season in Michigan is October 1st. On September 16th last year, the department came out with some new policies regarding venison donation, mandating that they need to be CWD, bovine tuberculosis tested, and
lead screened.
And even lead screened.
Lead screen, nice.
And two weeks before bow season. So, I mean, actually the youth hunt had already happened at that point, and the following day, the early antlerless season was going to start. I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone that says those aren't things that, or those are things we shouldn't do. We probably should be doing those screening. The implementation left almost everything to be desired at that point. And that stressed the program beyond those other issues, because now processors initially couldn't even process the deer until it was tested. Then the policy was changed that they could process the deer and had to store it and keep it until it was tested. So the freezer space became a huge issue at that point. I had heard anecdotal stories. I never verified this personally, that processors were turning away deer or discarding donated meat because they didn't have the storage capacity for the regular paying customers. Again, I heard those stories. I don't know if it's true.
Sure.
So the program, it needs some help. So the first thing people can do is push that button when you buy your licenses here in Michigan. Spend the $1 or whatever that it asks for.
I think it asks for $1.
Yeah, anything in excess of what they currently have in the budget or from those donations to pay for the program has to come out of game and fish, which then is affecting the management of deer and every other species that the department manages. So check that box, give them $1. But we're working really hard to get some general fund investment from the legislature into that program to ease some of those pressures, pay the processors kind of a fair market rate, provide some refrigerated trailers for when they're, the busiest times of the year, or in the summer if a farmer or a group of farmers is going to go out and do a call under their deer management permits. So those are the things we're working on with that. The program needs help. It is a fantastic program. It is something that we are working exceptionally hard on here in the state in conjunction with a lot of our deer partners. NDA, the Michigan Bow Hunters. It was not included in the governor's budget, but the department is helping as much as they can, at least on technical questions and things like that, since they can't actively stump for something that's not included in that budget.
Right. I guess for me, it sounds like there is a plan should the funding come in. It sounds like you guys at least know what to do to solve it.
Yeah, they've understood those stop gaps and those speed bumps that you were talking about with freezer space, the payment value of it as well. But also too, like the third piece is how do we streamline that testing process? You can't have deer hanging for weeks at a time and taking up freezer space, because that just exacerbates that other point of the issue. So we're trying to work in a very holistic manner to get all the problems solved. The biggest piece right now is that funding component. So as it was said, it was left out of the governor's budget. We're really lobbying hard to get that back into the budget so that at least we're not at a worse place than we were last year, but we're continuing to move forward and build the program and continue to talk about the value of this, that, hunters donate millions of pounds of meat to millions of families that need this food. And so what a great PR piece to say, hey, we increased that value. We increased those donations. We fed more people. And now they're able to, make more harvest, feed more people. So there's such a process to this. But, as it was said, we're working extremely hard here to do that.
I pitched it as a double benefit, too, because when people talk about doe management, particularly in the southern third of the state, where we have an excess of deer and we need to harvest specifically more antlerless deer. I view Sportsman Against Hunger as an important doe management tool. And then the other side of it, though, is the money that we're asking for is a fairly cheap investment on the humanitarian side of things, ensuring that there are hungry families that don't have to be hungry anymore.
Yeah, and
so it's really a double benefit there.
And by the way, they're being fed the most nutritious, healthy protein on the face of the earth.
No antibiotics, nothing.
Right. I mean, just absolute gorgeous meat. You know what I mean?
The Greenway Outdoors is brought to you by Ram Trucks, built to serve. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Savage Arms, Nosler Ammunition, Bosch Shot Shells, Wilderness Athlete, fuel for the rugged, Tracker Boats, fish the finest, Eagle Fishing, designed for the savvy angler, Rufus Teague Barbecues, Snacks, and Spices, Rectech Grills, it's more than a grill, it's a way of life, Sea-Doo, make your own waves, LEM Products, motivating people to hunt, process, and prepare their own food, Quiet Cat, the leader in electronic bikes for hunting, fishing, camping, and exploring. Consistency. That's what you aim for with every practice shot. So when you're out in the field, you get that same consistency every shot. With Carlson's choke tubes, consistency is what you'll get. Our choke tubes are long-lasting, high quality, and made right here in the USA. Carlson's choke tubes, pattern tested, hunter approved. Find out more at choketube.com.
Are you anxious to get going? Knowing that the clock is ticking and time truly is the most precious commodity in the world? Then you, my friend, are in good company.
I guess now, Michael, my last question for you guys would be, what are the big projects that you're working on right now, as far as, especially on the legislative side, but like, what are you guys working on specifically right now that people should be aware of?
So the legislature is actually out on spring break right now. They won't be back for a few weeks, but it is budget season. So our two main budget
That's government for you.
Yeah, right. 3-week vacations.
Yeah.
The Sportsman Against Hunger funding is one of our chief budget priorities right now. The other one is to get money for cormorant management, to help control those populations.
Oh, okay. I was like, damn, man, come on. I was like, I wish we could shoot those things. Okay. I'm like, I want those things gone.
Our membership actually just passed a resolution 3 weeks ago to support a cormorant hunting season.
Yes.
So that is an exceptionally difficult pull because that requires federal regulation, but lethal cormorant control, to get that money back in the budget, so that we can, kind of limit those populations, manage them properly for the benefit of the ecosystem. So
they do a lot of that.
Wise, those are the budget stuff. Policy wise, in the legislature, we have a bill coming that changes our mentored youth hunting program and just makes it a mentored hunting program. And the goal behind this is we have a member that came to us. She has a special needs son. And, there's a group of special needs individuals that maybe they can't comprehend a written hunter safety test. They can perform the physical duties of hunting under immediate supervision of a mentor. So we're trying to change the mentored hunting program so that those individuals can hunt on the mentored hunting license for their entire lives, meaning they have to be within arm's reach of a mentor who is supervising them while hunting. The goal of that, obviously, is just to get them in the woods, give them some amount of normalcy, because this one individual, he aged out. He took advantage of all the years that he could hunt without having passed a written hunter safety test. So that's a big one. The commercial fishing bill, which we already talked about a little bit, that making sure that one doesn't go anywhere, but we have since introduced our good commercial fishing bill. So the stakeholder-backed legislation is now out there that modernizes the commercial fishing industry in a lot of ways that hasn't been updated since the 70s. But most importantly, it keeps our game fish out of commercial nets.
Okay. What does that look like?
It is a 75-page monstrosity of regulation and code, and it took 6 months to get it right. So,
what would be like the top level points for people?
So, currently our commercial fishing is a patchwork of DNR rules and old statute from the 70s. It hasn't been updated in any meaningful way since my dad was in kindergarten. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the pictures that came out of Saginaw Bay. I think it was last May, where there were hundreds of dead walleye in a net. And that commercial angler did everything 100% by the book. Shocking visuals, 100% legal. DNR could take no enforcement action against him. So what our bill does is it kind of sets that baseline of best practices, net tending requirements, the depths you can fish your net, the type of nets you can use, reporting, marking of nets, things like that, to just take that patchwork, put it all in one place, update the fines so the fines are maybe a little bit more than doing the cost of doing business. And it also gives the department better enforcement, because currently the enforcement is being entirely subsidized by licensed recreational anglers. So it's about as small down as I can boil that one.
What fish would they fish for if they're not going after game fish?
So the commercial fish that they can fish for are already listed in statute: whitefish, burbot, catfish. There's a number of them. A species of white crappie, maybe. But it would keep our smallmouth bass, our largemouth bass, our walleye, our perch, our lake trout out of these commercial nets. They would not be allowed to fish these. It sets pretty strict limits for bycatch, meaning the fish that they inadvertently catch in their nets. And it would ban the use of gill nets for state licensed commercial anglers as well. So it's been a long time coming. Similar to the other version, there have been versions of this introduced in the past, but we re-upped it this year, freshened it up with the department, some biologists, some other stakeholder groups, and got that dropped just before spring break.
Okay.
So those are the two biggest policy things I'd say that we're working on right now. A lot of defense. If something came up, we would hop in, but budget wise, that's that. The other major priority that has consumed almost my entire last 3 months has been coyote hunting.
Yeah.
So the commission voted 2.5-3 weeks ago to close our coyote season for 3 months.
Yeah, we need to make sure all those pups grow up. Idiots.
We talked about a couple of the cornerstone issues of MUCC, like keeping things out of the legislature. This is another cornerstone issue, and I don't mean 3 months of coyote hunting again. It's a bigger picture of that.
Right.
is we have Proposal G in Michigan, was passed overwhelmingly in 1996, that says that commission shall make, to the best practical extent, forgive me, I'm probably butchering the exact language, but they use sound scientific principles in their game management decisions. If you go back and you watch the commission hearing, the only people that presented any sound scientific evidence were the people opposing the season closure. And the arguments made for the closure were emotional pleas and, I would say, unsubstantiated claims about public perception. But the commission voted to close that season 4-2, and we are now, the season will close, I think, on April 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Weak
Good.
people. Weak people, man. They should lose their job. We have that in place. You don't get to do that. Like, it's just, that is a bummer. That's just weak.
That's our position as well. And I've been working on this issue for about 6 months. It's only been public for about 3. But it became pretty clear that this was going to happen regardless of what was presented, and
right.
it went that way. I took to the NRC. I got a little theatrical with it, but I took a stack of peer-reviewed science sent to me by USDA APHIS biologists about why hunting coyotes in the spring is the most effective time to not only manage their populations, but to limit their predation on other game species, deer, turkey, grouse.
Yeah, that's when all the babies are dropping.
So exactly. So, I took that research to them, provided them with those citations should they desire to see it. But ultimately, there were the pleas of social pressures, perceived social pressures, I will say again, because the claims went largely unsubstantiated. Won the day.
Well, and it's
unfortunate.
It's important for your listeners and everyone tuning in to understand kind of the full picture of this. So in 2016, the DNR and the NRC voted to open the year-round coyote season, noting that it would not have any population level effect on the species. So it would not damage or, diminish the species. They are listed as a fur-bearing species here in Michigan. They're not a nuisance or an invasive. They are a fur bearer. And at that time, the NRC's job, as Justin said, is by sound science to allow and make available opportunity for Michigan hunters and anglers and trappers. And our mission statement has that word in there too, to enhance that outdoor heritage and natural resources. So in 2016, they went to a year-round season. And again, there was no population level effect, but as the literature and the studies showed that Justin presented, springtime is the best time to make localized population reduction. So if you have private property, if you're on a large farm, if you are seeing no turkeys in the area you hunt, springtime is the best time to locally manage that species so that the other species that we chase do not get degraded. They do not get knocked back. So fawns, grouse, woodcock, turkeys, everything like that. So for us, there is zero scientific benefit or any scientific information that says this closure will be a good thing or even a bad thing at all. It's just they're just doing it to close it. And in my mind, as I'm a linear thinking person, that if we can't have a population effect year round and we close it for 3 months of the year, won't that give them a nudge to grow more?
Right.
And we know that we have a population issue in the lower peninsula of Michigan. There are coyotes in downtown Detroit. I was talking about this last
where
night
I've seen them.
Athletic Club.
Yeah.
And they're all over. So they do need to be knocked back based on their population size. And to limit our opportunity at the best time of year to do that, we feel is going against Proposal G, which Justin said was overwhelmingly passed by all Michigan residents. Everyone in Michigan, 2/3 of Michigan thought, whether they hunt or not, they thought, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't let politics decide our natural resources, because everyone understands the abundance and how amazing Michigan's natural resources is. Whether you're on the water to fish or just to paddle, we all have amazing, pristine water here in Michigan. Whether you're in the woods for a hike or to hunt, Michigan has an abundance of public land. We have the most public land east of the Mississippi, only second to Florida, I think. And so there's such an opportunity here that we're talking about. People believed in Proposal G. They wanted Proposal G. And now we feel that the NRC went against that charge, that legal charge, to manage based on sound scientific principles and not social perception or somebody's opinion of you. And some of the reasons they give, why not take an education campaign towards this? Why not have hunters be better at posting social media pictures or talking about our craft and our outdoor heritage and our livelihood? Why not use education to help people who might not be giving us the best face out there in the public, instead of limiting those who are doing the work? Why are we not doing, something that can help everyone and continue to, have our outdoor heritage and our natural resources in perpetuity?
Right. I couldn't agree more. I'm glad that you guys exist. I'm glad that you guys are fighting these battles. For people that want to join MUCC, what's the process? What do they do?
Yeah, definitely. So visit us at mucc.org. So it's a pretty simple, website. For 87 years, as you said, we've existed for over 87 years now. We were founded in 1937. And really, policy is not just the only thing we do. It's a big shadow that goes over the organization because it's where the rubber meets the road for us and how we do save our outdoor heritage. But MUCC is doing a lot of other amazing things around the state. We have a youth camp in Chelsea, Michigan, inside the Waterloo State Rec area. We put over 300 students through that camp every year. They can get hunter safety certified at camp with us. They shoot 22s. They do archery. They fish. They paddle. They build shelter buildings, survival skills. They learn about ecology. They learn about the North American wildlife model. So we are making sure that next generation really has the opportunity to instill their own outdoor heritage in their life. We have kids that have never heard crickets or seen stars, and we have kids who killed their first deer at 6 years old. So it's not just for new people. It's for people who are already in love with our resources and our outdoor heritage. So that youth camp is Michigan's premier outdoor camp for young people. And it's anywhere from ages 9 to 16 years of age that have our overnight opportunities. Younger classes have day camp opportunities. We run that all summer long. We have tons of scholarships available. We usually can't fill up all the scholarships that we have. So if there's a listener that really might not be able to afford the camp fee, we've got scholarships that we can offer and connect you with. We have ones for active duty law enforcement, military members, for children from urban settings, children from different types of homes. We really want to get those kids outdoors and starting that. So our advocacy is what we're best known for, but our youth camp and our next generation is second to none as well. We also produce the Michigan Outdoors magazine, which is for over 75 years been Michigan's premier outdoor journal. It tells the stories of all of our outdoor men and women and what we're working on and the issues you need to be involved with. We also have our On the Ground program. We call it OTG, and that is to get out on public land and do habitat improvement. So we're getting people hands-on with conservation. They're doing brush pile building, invasive species removal, river cleanups, tree plantings. We're really making a big dent out on public land to enhance habitat and make sure we have those great places for our game species. And then lastly, it's just a communication and awareness issue for us. Even if you don't want to be a member of MUCC, I want everyone to sign up for our newsletter. Every 2 weeks, you're going to get a conservation insider sent to you via email, and you're just going to get a rundown of everything we're working on. You're going to be updated on the fundraising events that we're hosting. We have over 5 events this year. You guys are going to be at one of those with us for a great event we have in May. But really, just go to mucc.org. Your 1-year membership is only $35, so it's the same as another national organization. But you're going to have the impact right here in Michigan with that membership that you're signing up for. 1-year membership is $35. 2-year membership is $60. So you get a little bit of a discount. You can set up auto renewal. You're going to get the magazine sent to you every quarter. We do it 4 times a year. 100-page magazine comes to your door and tells you all those stories as a member. And then you're also going to get those action alerts that Justin talked about through our policy center. So when another bill like the Ann Arbor bill for fishing our game species comes out, you're going to get an email. We make it really easy. You put in your phone, your address, your first and last name. You click send, and it drops that inbox of those legislatures. And even the DNR director, sometimes we have to email as well. But getting that membership, we also have life membership opportunities, so you can sign up to be a life member and support the organization, for the rest of your life and the rest of my life. We're also looking for corporate sponsors. So we have our Conservation Partners program. If you want to get involved and have a culture of conservation within your workplace, we can host volunteer days. We can get you outside. We can do educational opportunities. So really, it's just about growing our membership and growing those that allow us to have a bigger voice. So mucc.org, get up there today, sign up, reach out. You can find Justin and my contact information on the website. If you want to get involved, we need more bodies, we need more voices, and we need more sportsmen and women to take up charge.
We appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us.
Thanks for having us. Thank
you so much for tuning into the Greenway Outdoors podcast. Remember, we have a TV show. It's on the History Channel streaming app right now, as well as Tubi, as well as Carbon TV And we're going to have a second season coming out later this year. One episode actually with including MUCC. And then on top of that, we have a weekly video podcast that comes out here every Monday and a weekly vlog that comes out every Friday. You can find that on YouTube and Carbon TV as well. Thanks so much for tuning in, and stay green.